Welkom by vandag se laaste uitsending van die Rugby TV vir die jaar. Ek dink die kwessie wat op almal se lippe is die aankondiging van die Rugby Challenge wat laas Sondag in rapport gedoen is en oral gedoen is. Ons het twee gaste vandag hier. Ons het meneer Bart Schoeman, die voorsitter van hierdie hele proses, en dan het ons vir Theo Gurran. Theo is one of the, well, personally I know Theo for a few years now, and he's always shouting loud, but his heart is in the right place, and I know when he writes something, it's quality work that comes from it, so we'll test that also today. Bart, jy's eerste aan die woord. Daar's baie vrae oor dit, hoekom ons dit doen, hoekom is die reeks daar, waarom gebeur dit?
Dankie Karl, ek dink ons almal deel dieselfde passie en liefde vir skole rugby. Julle oor verskillende redes, miskien is ek myself wat 'n geskiedenis het as 'n onderwyser en 'n skoolafrigter en wat die voorreg gehad het om tot op professionele vlak af te rig en met jong manne te werk. So dit is nie anders nie. Ons almal wil graag sien dat die reeds bestaande baie sterk skolestelsel wat ons in Suid-Afrika het tog leemtes wat ons kan verbeter. En ons glo, in teenstelling met die persepsies daar buite, ons is nog in 'n baie jong fase beplanningsgewys van die reeks, maar ons glo dat die reeks kan bydra daartoe, om van die leemtes aan te spreek en ons basis in skole rugby sterker te maak. Waar ons weet, ons topskole in Suid-Afrika waarskynlik reeds die topskole in wêreldskole rugby verteenwoordig. Glo ons het ons nou die geleentheid om daai basis ook sterker te maak. Ons glo as ons die geleentheid kry om regtig die tyd en die hulpbronne in te sit daarin, dat ons daarby kan uitkom.
You were very vocal about your opinions against this, but I don't think your opinion is against this, the new challenge that's being called out, more about the whole situation in South African schoolboy rugby?
Yes, I agree. As a competition, I don't have an objection to it, and as I said, I would love to watch those games. I mean, I'm a lover of schoolboy rugby, and of course, you want to see the top teams playing against each other. But I think you have to see it in a wider context, and that is in the threat that rugby at schools in the country is under on a bigger scale. And I just somehow think it's wrong to be putting so much time and effort and probably money into the schools that are so good already without trying to do something for the rest of the schools to try and remedy the situation everywhere. Because wherever I go, I find that the game is under threat, that schools rugby is actually dying in most parts of the country.
But I think at this stage you can reveal more about the format of the, I don't want to call it a competition, the format of the challenge. How's it going to look? You spoke about 2 tiers.
Thanks, Carl. Yes, and I think that Theo has got very, very valid questions, also that he mentioned in some of his comments on social media. And I think he's sharing probably some questions that other people also have, without elaborating in too much detail. The idea of the series is firstly to make sure that the base of players involved in the series, for starters, if you look at individual schools, would be at least 13 teams participating. That's the minimum. Through an exciting concept that we are looking at currently in partner schools, and those partner schools would be smaller schools. We are excited to say that we've already been in a situation that Garsfontein have officially partnered up with Tygervallei, Paul Valley High School as a smaller school at various levels. And if I say partner up, it's not only participating as one combined group against a school with more teams. So the idea would be if Offies go down and play against Paul Roos, for example, and Paul Roos couldn't provide them with 26 teams, we will find a school to provide the rest of the teams, so that it doesn't become, and without mentioning competition names, we all know that there's certain competitions running in South Africa, high-profile competitions, that focus solely either on first teams or A teams. And that is definitely not the purpose and the target that we are having our eyes on, more than the fact that we will be very glad if an under 14C player of a school would be able to say, I've played against all the top teams in South Africa in 1 year, much more than it would be for the first team. Theo is 100% right. We don't have to blow the bugles of the first teams of the top schools in South Africa. But with the partner system, firstly, and then also the fact that after year one, we are looking at extending the series into a second tier with 6 schools from the northern parts of the country, 6 schools from the southern parts of the country, so that in the end you're getting closer to 20 schools involved without the partner schools. So in effect, we are looking at really expanding the rugby base amongst rugby schools. Further to that, as part of the spin-off effect of the competition and being sponsored out of the sponsors that we acquire, we are looking at providing the smaller schools and or schools that's not so affluent and their coaches with coaching courses that would be presented with top-level coaches, and they could attend them for free. So that would be part of a district road show. The final composition of that would be finalized in the next couple of months. And also we are very excited about the fact that we will be doing a road show where we will be informing parents and players. Grade 11 players would be the target, but not limited to that. And giving them the opportunity to get some access to information about what after schoolboy rugby. Where do I go to? I think there's a huge emphasis currently on players being targeted and going overseas, and that would always be there. Those opportunities would always be there for the players. But there are so much more opportunities locally, over and above the fact that the bigger picture to get a player to further his education would also be part of that information session. So the bigger picture of getting to much more players, informative towards parents and also coaches that don't have the opportunity purely because the top coaching course costs too much for them to attend, would be the spin-off effects that we foresee out of the series.
I'm going to be spiteful. Hoe voel jy daaroor? Antwoord dit van jou vraag, is daar dalk 'n voorstel wat jy ekstra wou bygehad het wat Bart hulle kon doen daarbey?
Well, obviously you can't knock the ideas that he's put forward. You know, there are schools that need help, and if you're going to be willing to give that help, then obviously that's going to be a good thing to do. I mean, I don't have an argument with that. I just, you know, the problem is, and there's one big problem in all of this, and that has to do with the recruitment and the poaching of players from all over the country to go to those top schools. Now, I won't say that those top schools are good because they are buying players from everywhere, but it's certainly helping them. And we have to, it's difficult to solve that problem, I know, but we can't institute systems that are going to help that. Now, I don't know how your partnering up is going to work, but if you're going to partner Garsfontein, I think you said with Paul Fillet. Paul Fillet is in Stellenbosch, or Paul, on the other side of the world. So I don't know how exactly logistically that's going to work. But I'll be happy with it if there was a hard and fast rule that no player from Paul Fillet may leave that school and go to Garsfontein. You don't want the situation with Grey College and Montpellier. You don't want Paul Follet to become a feeder school for Garsfontein. And that can happen. It is happening. It is happening. As far as the 13 teams per school competition, obviously that's much better than the Noordval competition here, which is first team and A teams. And I agree with that. But none of those schools, Monument and Garsfontein, play in that Noordval competition here. The others all play friendlies only, of your top 6. They're already fielding 25, 23, 21, 25 teams on a Saturday. And they're already filling up with other schools. They're doing it already. They're not partnering with a single school, but they will fill up their fixtures with teams from other things. So I'm associated with a school in Johannesburg who has that many teams. When they play a smaller school, they'll have teams from Offies, Pretoria Boys High, that'll come and play in the C's and D's and the 5th and 6th to make up the fixture. So that kind of thing is going on already, and it's healthy. The danger is when it becomes an association and a familiarity, and you're starting to see those guys play every year and every week, and you're coaching them and you're getting to know those players, that the temptation will be to spot a talented player at that school and lure him across to your school. And he'll go because of the better opportunities he's getting. There may or may not be a bursary or financial incentive attached, and that is the evil. That's one of the evils that I foresee happening when you're having this concentration of all the top schools into a very prestigious, very good competition. The talented players around the country are going to want to play in it. And so it's going to be easy, if you go and look for them, to be able to recruit them to come to your school. That may be a problem. I think that your idea of having second tier, third tier playing in it is a great idea. I don't know if you're going to find them, though. I don't know if you're going to find 12 schools. Another 12 schools will be willing to enter this kind of competition. Maybe you will. But my view is that a lot of schools are very reluctant to have such an emphasis on winning. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to be about. The top schools are going to play each other. They're not playing each other for the exposure or for the help they're going to be giving to the small schools. They want to, at the end of the day, be the champion school of South Africa. And that's what you're creating here. You're creating a school championship. And by your own admission, you can't have a school championship at the moment because they don't all play each other. So you're putting in a structure where they will all play each other every year. And at the end of that, I don't know, I know and understand that you're still busy working on the format, but I guess in the end of the day, you'll have a final. Or maybe it'll be a league. But the point is, at the end of the day, there'll be an overall champion school of South Africa, which is great. And as I said, I'll travel across town to go and watch them play. But winning is what that's all about. And I think a lot of the schools, certainly the principals, the people that I know and speak to, the circles that I move in, they don't like that idea. They reckon rugby at school is an educational activity. All sport is part of the educational program of the school, and winning shouldn't be the most important thing.
Bart, wil jy antwoord?
Yes, thanks, Carl. Again, Theo, very valid comments. And I think you're a fantastic soundboard for a lot of parents and principals out there. Myself coming out of the environment, having coached at Waterkloof for years and played in a lot of finals as well, so I know both sides of the river. The fact of the matter is that the schools' needs will prevail. So we are in discussion with the schools. Some of the comments already have been referred to on the basis of the competition. So that is something that is totally negotiable, that we immediately said that we'll get back to the principals, the headmasters and the schools. So whether there's ultimately going to be a league system or not, that's not what the basis is about. We've put it out there as a possibility, and if that is not what the schools want, that is not the way that we would go. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that we hope to think that we can use this as a platform to make schools aware and also assist and advise in terms of cross-school recruitment, because that is definitely something that we do not stand for. I understand it might it might be a roll-on effect out of the whole thing. But I have to say, we're not going to mention school names, but even though we have schools that's not part of a formal league system in South Africa, schools jump at the opportunity if they could go to Japan and play in the World Champs, and eventually say, we got a silver or a gold medal. So it doesn't matter who. And all of these schools that we've mentioning in this series have been part of that previously. So they still want to play to somewhere. And if you look at the biggest inter-schools tournament in the world, not tournament, inter-schools game between Paul and Paul Boys High, there's such a huge emphasis on winning there. Granted, not part of a league system, but I believe that our drive behind this series will be further away from really a league system than anything else, and the other elements would be a much bigger focus. So definitely, we hear your points about it. We've already had discussions with the school principals on that, and that would be something that would be discussed further as we go along before the series is finalized. So the one guarantee that we can give you and the people out there is that there won't be a massive drive to make this a league thing so that we can eventually have a winner. Everyone play against everyone, yes, that would be a big drive, and that came out of the schools themselves more than from our side. But like I say, valid points that you are making, and we hope to straighten out some of these perceptions to the liking of the public, parents, and principals out there in time.
Well, just one question. You don't need a league table or anything to determine a winner. Who's the best school in South Africa? It's Grey College. That's the school you need to be up there. But you've got a valid point. My question is just, is it the responsibility of this new series to stop it? And can they stop it? And if, the series is going ahead, will it really impact that big on poaching of players and that?
Well, it is going on already, I know. The problem is that we've reached a stage where people are just throwing their hands up and they're saying there's nothing we can do about it. And so it's just carrying on. My concern is just that a competition like this will make it, will place more, it's focusing the attention on fewer and fewer schools, and therefore it's going to concentrate the talent into those schools because it's such a big, prestigious competition, and therefore it's going to be an aid towards recruitment. I don't buy the story that there's nothing we can do about it. The people who can stop it, who can stop this recruitment, and they all met. They all meet once a year, or a lot of them meet once a year, and that's the principals of the schools. The principals of the schools in South Africa, if they get together and decide we don't want any recruitment and poaching of players anymore, we won't allow it. I won't allow it at my school. If every one of them agrees to that and they stick to it, that'll be the end of the story. They are going ahead with it. Why? Because it's allowing their first team to win rugby matches and therefore adding prestige to their school. And with the prestige and all those things come other things, come sponsorship, come money, etc., etc. And to be number one in the country, and I don't, you can have a league or not a league. What you're doing will determine the number one school in the country. It'll probably be Grey College, I agree. But if they all play each other, then you can have a legitimate ranking of them. They've all played each other. You can say these are the top 8 schools, number 1 to 8. They do it in Cape Town with the southern suburb schools. Cape Town, Bishops, Sax, Rondebosch, and Wynberg all play each other twice every year. And on the basis of that, they rank those schools 1 to 4, and it's absolutely legitimate. You can do it. And that's what's going to happen, whether you have a final or a league or not. They're going to say, we as Grey College are the top school in the country, and Paul Gymnasium are going to want to be the top school in the country. And my fear is, I'm not saying they're going to do it, they probably won't, but my fear is they're going to start doing what it takes to become number one. And that's where you're running a risk.
On the poaching question, I think you left out one and I want to call it the dominant factor, is the drive from parents and the kids. We can say at school level, the principals, I know there's a meeting of the schools, the boys' schools, that they're going to say they're going to boycott the guys that's doing the poaching and that kind of stuff. But, I mean, aren't we supposed to look at the parents first? I mean, if you don't allow your kid to be poached, there will be no poaching.
Oh, that's true. I mean, the parents are obviously complicit in it, and the boys want to go where they want to go. They want the prestige. They want to be at the top schools. And so there is that side to it. I agree, and it makes it just more and more difficult to bring an end to it. But it's all going to disappear if there's just a hard and fast rule amongst the schools that we're going to stop this practice. And as I've said earlier, there's a proven way of doing it, and it's the American college sporting system, the AAA or whatever. They decided that they would not allow not first years, but people who come who change universities, their first year at the new university. During that first year, they may not play for the university's first team. And that had put an end to that practice. You were getting basketball players and footballers being bought, and they were being bought by the supporters, the so-called boosters of the teams. They were putting money into it. They were recruiting players, attracting them to their university. And they said, right, you can bring the player to university, but he's not going to play for you. And that put the end to it. Now, if we had to introduce something like that in our schools, it would end it in a year. Because sure, there are parents who get transferred, there are players who move for legitimate reasons, but you're going to have to come down a hard and fast rule. No one plays for the new school in their first year there, and that practice is going to stop. It's going to dwindle and it's going to stop. And the principals, unfortunately, are not being honest, because most of them will agree that it's a bad thing, that it's not educational. There are all sorts of problems which we can talk about later. Not the least of is, what about the players who are already at that school? What about the guy who played under 14, under 15, under 16, is now played third team, and now it's his turn to be in the first team, and suddenly a guy from the other side of the country arrives at the school. I mean, what do his parents say? Do you think they're supportive of the system when that happens? I know for a fact, because they talk to me, that many of them are very, very upset and angry about that kind of practice. So I just think we have to be working on stopping this practice, and I don't see it. Sorry.
Sorry. I think we all agree that's an evil, but is there a will to stop it? And can we stop it? And is it necessary to, at the new competition that Bart and them are launching? I mean, most of your aggression towards this whole competition is regarding the poaching and the competitive nature of the competition. So what we agree is maybe it will contribute another 1% to it.
Well, I think obviously this competition is going to be unique in that it's going to involve all the top schools. It's going to involve the eight top rugby schools in the country, the really serious players. And if you can get a commitment from those 8, that they're going to stop this practice, that'll be a hell of a good place to start, wouldn't it?
Thanks, Theo. And, I think, we're elaborating and taking a bit of time on this point, but you spot on about a very, very sensitive issue in schoolboy rugby in South Africa. And one thing I can guarantee you, Theo, is that from our side, there will be a very strong promotion on doing the right thing. So if we could plant the right seeds amongst the principals, and you spot on there, it's about our leaders in the schools, whether it's the SGB or whether it's the principals or whether it's the parents playing a role there, they all need to get together and support the right thing. So that I can guarantee you, that's something that we would convey as part of our information sessions very strongly, that we don't have this situation worsening, or where we could even curb or control it, that would be a strong goal from our side. So this is a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, we're currently sitting with, for example, I mean, everyone's referring to New Zealand as the ethical leaders in terms of rugby. But what I can tell you, in their schoolboy system, they also have issues. So they've got a 6-week rule in the New Zealand schoolboy system. If you move from schools, you 6 weeks not. So 6 weeks is nothing in the context of a long rugby season. 6 weeks is actually nothing. But to them, they even moving now where they would recruit players, schoolboy players from South Africa to go there so that they can, and we've already had calls and interest from that side, so that they could miss the 6 weeks. So if it's someone coming from abroad, they would not fall in the 6-week system. It's only movement amongst their own schools, which is crazy, actually. So I'm just mentioning that as a matter of, it happens even, like I say, even in the ethical leaders of rugby, we always feel like New Zealand, they've also got that problem. But the fact that you make a very strong point about this, and we hope to think the school, the schoolboy system amongst the schools where it's only boys actually started off with having that agreement amongst the principals. That is not being extended to all of the rugby schools, and we hope to think that we could all, amongst us, make the point that we get to that agreement amongst the principals. And that would be something that we could use as a tool out of this series. Definitely, Cole, you know, as an ethical tool to get to, and make sure that, you know, that's not something that we would promote and stand for out of the series, more than widening base of rugby in schoolboy rugby.
I'll ask another question. I'll ask a question which is not a popular one amongst rugby people. But what about transformation? What about, you know, if you want to televise these matches, and I think you're going to have to, because you're not going to get good sponsorship unless they're televised. Are we going to have a situation where we see two teams of 15 white players each, or maybe one or two so-called coloured players in those teams playing on a Saturday morning? And will the television broadcasters in 2020 be prepared to broadcast those games? Are you going to put some? Are you going to try in some way to acknowledge that that's an imperative, whether we like it or not? I mean, we may not agree with the rules of the game, but those are the rules of the game in South Africa, and we need to acknowledge that those schools, the one from Pretoria that's playing in the competition, I watched them play this year more than once, and they didn't have a single player of colour in their first team. You know, it's an Afrikaans medium school, and I understand all the reasons for that. But that is the situation, and that's the image that's being broadcast or will be broadcast on television in South Africa in 2021, and that's not going to be well received.
Theo, I think the school you referred to is Office, and they did have a wing, I think, for 4 or 5 matches that was black. Barton, if I may, I don't think we can expect from one tournament or one, what do we call it, to change the whole country. It's not 3 or 4 guys or 3 or 4 schools' responsibility to change the country. Bart, I don't know if you want to catch up on that, but that's my feeling, personally.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And I do believe that Theo has definitely touched on another burning issue in South African rugby, that is transformation. And if I say burning, it's everyone is not totally accepted, gotten on board. The reality of it all is that where I've had the privilege to be involved with the Lions over a period of 6 years, 7 years at professional level, we have supported the transformation system in place by SARU. And I don't think if we look at the wonderful things that's happened over the past couple of months with regards to the World Cup, and not only winning the World Cup, but on the basis of transformation issues, a lot of positives that came from that. We can say that there's huge progress in South Africa. The one thing that you have mentioned, which is very true, is that it's very difficult to make transformation the responsibility of small pockets of units and or competitions. I do believe that there should be focus on schools themselves, even though we also understand it becomes a society situation, whether it's a boys' school, specific medium of teaching, etc., that makes a huge difference. Some of the schools got Afrikaans and English medium for their matriculants, and some schools are either just Afrikaans or English. So those are all aspects playing a role. But I think sport-wise, the emphasis should probably be passed a little bit more to the schools as individual entities to try and transform and make sure that they also involve players of color, sportsmen of color, rather than making it an institutionalized thing. Some places it might work, some places it won't work. So one thing I do agree with you is I don't believe it's the responsibility of the series to transform schools as such. The one thing that we will definitely be able to do and use as a tool is the opportunity to get involved with smaller schools, schools with lesser opportunities, less affluent schools, and getting their coaching staff and management staff involved in coaching and information sessions. I do believe if we start upskilling our coaches at all levels, you're already going to get a different situation. We've had in the past, teams attending festivals, even at provincial level, and walking away with 3 losses of 50, 60 points every time. And then one should wonder, was that really an educational goal reached, more than just having the right face of the competition? So there's a lot to be answered for. Again, I think we can use the series as a tool to sensitize schools and possibly areas, and we are and will be privileged in involving smaller schools, and we are excited about the possibility of involving schools out of our coloured communities into the partnership of schools, which gives it a different angle than just institutionalizing transformation, which might be difficult. So there will be a lot of aspects and tools that we can use to get to the goals that I believe SARU would like to see in individual schools.
See, just one question, and we were the whole thing about poaching and everything, but the development of black players, would that poaching be then okay because they're getting an opportunity? And if we force the bigger schools to play with black guys, which obviously would be talented in that, should we then excuse the poaching of black players or the moving of black players into prominent schools from the normal poaching problem that you had?
Yeah, you and I have discussed this before, and it's where I become a bit schizophrenic, I guess, because yes, I think it's not a hard and fast rule. I mean, we spoke about, remember, we attended the Legends Kawi Week, and there, everyone was there. Everyone, the scouts from all the top schools were there, and checkbooks were out, and players were being transferred to those schools, and I agreed that there's probably nothing wrong with that, because those boys are all coming from schools where rugby is hardly played at all, and they've received some coaching, and obviously there's talent amongst them, and why not allow that player then go to a proper established rugby school and do well, because there was nothing for him to stay where he was. The problem, of course, is different when the guy's already at a good rugby school, and that's happening. players who are already at schools that are playing rugby, they're just not at their top level, and yet they are bought. I mean, in the article that I wrote that you guys referred to, I spoke about the scorched earth policy of these top schools. They're leaving havoc and devastation where the players are coming from, because you get a player at one of the smaller. You have many of these new smaller private schools that are springing up. They are trying to get rugby going at those schools. They're new schools. They're trying to establish a rugby program, which is good for us. We need rugby programs wherever. They get a player who shines, who makes it to the finals, the final trials for the Grant Coma week. And guess what happens? He's at one of the government boys' schools the next term. And that happens all the time. And we're talking about black players here. So that's a different story. If you're talking about a real development structure in a school that's struggling, where rugby is really not going, and there's no future for a player to remain there, then sure, take him to a school where his talent can be developed. But have some consideration for the guys who are really trying, who've worked hard, getting rugby going at their school, and then they lose, and they can't afford to lose their star player, and yet that happens. It happens often.
Bart, ek weet nie of jy verder op daai wil voortgaan nie.
Just maybe one remark, Carl. I'm actually very excited about developments amongst, let's call it the so-called private schools that's not used to be typical rugby schools. And that's probably got to do with the fact that we've got a sort of a migration from the government schools over the last couple of years for various reasons of better sportsmen or kids that's more sports orientated at a higher level, and therefore you actually do get the situation now, and I've experienced it, had a good look at it, did a little bit of research into it, that a lot of the private schools are now starting to appoint rugby directors to look after development of rugby in the whole of the school, which was not the case in the past. And I've always been a very keen advocate of that. And I'd like to mention a couple of schools now to say how big a difference it's made. Over the past 5-6 years, schools like Jeppy, Kes, Helpmekaar, all were always very competitive schools, but their rugby has really gone to a next level. And if you go and you have a look at why that has happened, I can honestly say, I believe because I appointed a rugby leader at the school, someone that managed the process of rugby development at the school at a higher level. And that really made a big difference. So if you go that route, I'm sure that even there you would have an extended and growth of your base in terms of rugby at those schools. You are probably going to lose a couple of top players out of those schools, yes, but that has happened to the so-called smaller schools. In the past, Jeppy and Kes would lose good players. Now they retain those players. Kes, for the first time in their history, beat Office this year at home. I'm sorry to mention that, Carl, but it is a great fact for my point that I'm trying to make. And likewise, there's been similar results across the country. So that's what we want to see. So I am very positive about the growth amongst our lesser known rugby schools that's starting to, and it's not only about the first team. If you go and have a look what happened between Paul Gym and Paul Boys this year, across the board with results, over and above the first team. Look across the board where you've got a boys' school with huge depth that has actually come out second best against Paul Gym in terms of rugby results. So in my mind, and again, go and look at who they appointed as their rugby leader. I'm very positive about the tendency that's taking place. And I do see, Theo, that if that continues, you will see in time a St. David's or a St. Stithians actually taking a rightful place. We suddenly, and that's a huge part of the Lions revival over the last couple of years, was the fact that our schoolboy rugby improved hugely because of the focus that has changed amongst the lesser known rugby schools. So I'm not totally negative about it. I think the schools will in time be able to retain their players. The years are gone that Monash was the anchor of schoolboy rugby in Lions World. Now it often happens that they would lose more than just the first team match against Helpmekaar, that they would lose against Kes, they would lose against Jeppe. And that is what you want to see. You want to see a better competitive structure, and I believe it's busy happening.
Maar as ek kan saamvat, Theo, ek weet nie of jy met my gaan erken nie, of gaan saamstem nie, die groot vraag is nie werklik, gaan die nuwe aangekondigde reeks 'n sukses wees of wat is sy waarde wat hy gaan toevoeg tot die Suid-Afrikaanse skole rugby ding is nie. Ons praat die hele tyd nou meer oor die probleem in Suid-Afrikaanse skole rugby en in Suid-Afrikaanse senior rugby. Maar ek weet nie of jy nog iets wil sê nie, Theo, maar baie dankie dat jy hier was. Ons gaan vir jou seisoenkaartjie stuur vir die reeks. Bart, but you've got another major announcement that you want to make?
Thanks, Carl. Yes, we are excited that Outeniqua has also committed to and very earnestly wants to be part of the series. Over the last couple of days, received written confirmation from them as well, which gives us the opportunity to involve a school from another area of the country where schoolboy rugby is keenly followed and supported. So they will also be involved into the main part of the series as then let's call it a top 8 program. And as we continue negotiations with the different schools and their leadership into the new year, finalization on that will take place, but they are definitely bound to join the series as well, and we're very excited about that.
Dankie, dit is die laaste episode soos ek reeds genoem het van Rugby TV 4 jaar. Gaste Theo, thank you so much. Bart, you've got a lot of work still to do. Enjoy your Christmas. Thank you.